So I'd like to now invite Keith and Steve back up to the stage, and if I could get all three of you to have a seat. We've got plenty of time to get through all the great questions that have come through Slido. All right, so we've got first question here. How much, from Penny, how much feedback do you provide to suppliers on their feedlot performance, and are the top performers preferentially rewarded? So Keith, that's very much one for you, I think.
Yes, yeah. Certainly our objective is about providing feedback to all our producers on carcass performance through the meatworks. I suppose one of the biggest challenges we have is the objective measurements when it comes to marbling score results. So we're out there working with industry, especially looking at new technologies there too to help improve the robustness of carcass feedback for the future. And when it comes to premiums as such, we don't put grids out by the category. All our pricing is done on an individual basis, with our livestock buyer and the client. And obviously, what's always considered is how well those cattle are performing historically, and that's always brought into the mix. We don't necessarily pay specifically on that, like incentives off the kill floor on the grading back. We are doing a little bit of that with some Wagyu guys at the moment, but as I said, until we get some of those measurement tools to be a bit more robust, which I think is not too far away, I think that'll help us progress in that space in the future.
Thanks very much, Keith. I think, and that ties in a lot with what we've been talking about with the lamb supply chain in the session, and Nick alluded to as well. Nick, there's one here for you from Michael Kelly. An observation that merino stud sheep breeders appear slow to adopt genomics and breeding values to help their clients. How do you think we could change this?
Thanks, Mike. Nice loaded question there. I don't think it's so I think it comes back to what I was trying to allude to in the presentation. We can't convince seed stock producers as to what they want to do. We can only vote with our feet. So if they're not supplying the information that you require that is going to help you achieve your breeding objective, you've got the right to go somewhere else. There are some very progressive merino studs out there that are taking a lot of information, doing full genomic testing. Their accuracy is very high and they're capturing a large number of traits. So vote with your feet, go and spend your hard-earned cash where you're going to get the best result. And I think that's the best way forward.
Yeah, great answer. And I think, speaking now probably from a sheep genetics experience, we've seen the growth in and adoption of genomics has been the largest in the merino database. Obviously, there's other benefits relating to pedigree, but I think we've just heard Angus in Australia have hit 200,000 genotypes in the analysis. We've just hit the same in merinos, and 30% of the current year drop that are submitted have got a genotype. So I think we're in a changing time, and that push-pull that Steve alluded to as well comes into play there. Steve, one for you. Are there learnings from the Canadian example and your experience elsewhere that we can use to help with the development of multi-breed in the Australian system?
Yeah, I guess the experience in Canada was, in those early days anyways, that there was two aspects I think that really got breed societies offside. The one was it was a way for breeders to basically go around the breed society to get breeding values, and then the multi-breed thing. I think the actual idea of we're going to generate a multi-breed EBV is not actually all that threatening. In the U.S., the Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center, Nebraska, which has I think 7,000 or 9,000 cows or something, that their primary purpose of that herd is actually to generate a crossbreed comparison. So every year they They run some different Angus bulls and Hereford bulls and Charolais bulls and whatever over those cows, and then and they come up with a table that's published, and you can go on Beef Improvement Federation website, and there's a crossbreed EPD table there. So how breeds rank isn't a mystery anymore. That's every year they update that, and you can look at the breed differences. So if you said for example, there's no surprise, Angus marble more than Charolais. There's that's just there. It's a fact. So I don't think the idea of a multi-breed EBV is actually that threatening. But if it's a threat to the existing business models of the societies, then that's the problem. And I think the problem we ran into in Canada then, all the breeders that have got all the cattle and all the data, you don't just alienate the society. You've actually alienated all those breeders go with it. And that's so I think here in Australia, how do we make a system that's actually a benefit for everybody?
Yeah, great insights on that one, Steve. So there's one here, and I actually might get you, Steve, to give your thoughts on it, and then maybe pass on to Nick for his thoughts on farm. Steve, you spoke about mature cow weight and recording of it, and in Australia we're actually proportionally compared to the others in Angus are doing a pretty good job. If we think about sheep, should we be taking more notice of mature ewe weights, similar to the cattle industry?
Oh, I would say, I think the phenomenon's the same in both cases. That, and actually you made a good point earlier, because you also got the shearing issue, right? That we can make the ewes bigger, but we as a human race, we're not keeping up in terms of getting ourselves bigger and bigger and stronger. So that's another issue. But certainly, just that fact that if you plot out the nutritional requirements in terms of, the bigger ewes are, the bigger cows are, the more they eat. That's just basics, and that's a cost. So, the bigger your mature animals, then the less you can run on a given piece of land, and that's so. But there is, I guess I use an analogy when it comes to genetic selection. I guess if you look in beef cattle, you look at birth weight and post-weaning gain, birth weight and weaning weight, or birth weight and yearling weight. They've done a great job of actually keeping birth weight low or maintaining birth weights, or even dropping them a bit in Angus, and actually ramping up gains for live weight. And they did that because they actually measured both things. They had to measure both things to identify the bulls that actually had low birth weights and high post-weaning gain. And I use the examples like bending a piece of pipe, right? So if I have a piece of copper pipe in my hands, and I'm going to bend them, I need to hold on to both ends of the pipe. I need to hold on to yearling weight and birth weight. And it's the same at the other end of the scale. If I want to now kind of moderate cow weight, I've actually got to bend that pipe on the other end. I got to hold it in the middle and grab the other end and bend it down. I've got to measure the mature weights. I can't just measure yearling weight and birth weight and expect to do anything with cow weights. As I push up yearling weight, the cow weights are just going to go up. I've got to grab a hold of that with measurements to pull it down, and it's the same for sheep. I think it's a pretty parallel situation, really.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Nick, did you have some comments on? You did touch on it in your presentation.
Yeah, and probably not a lot more to add, but it's and I think Steve made the exact point that the bigger they are, the less you can run. It all comes back to how many DSE your property can support and how many dollars per DSE that you're achieving. I mean, that's where we make the economic return. So when you look at things on a dollars per hectare, dollars per DSE basis, if your mature weight's so much higher, and even though your weaning weight's high, you're actually not getting anywhere. You really need to, as Steve put so well, grab both ends of the copper pipe, and actually control them. And that's very hard to do, particularly because consumers or the commercial guys are putting so much pressure on seed stock guys to have this massive post-weaning weights, and it's highly correlated to adult weight until we can start to find those curve benders within the industry that can sort of start to curve the pipe.
Yeah, go for it.
I think one other, I mentioned that Mead Animal Research Center data where they rank all the breeds for all the traits. A couple of years ago, for the first time, they released a new trait, which was mature cow weight. And I think it was maybe of no surprise, but just reinforced what I think a lot of people already knew. actually, of all the breeds, Simmental, Charolais, all these, when I went through school, you had your Continentals, which were big, and your British, which were kind of moderate in size. The biggest cows genetically are Angus cows in the U.S. at the moment. So again, yeah, we've upped yearling weights, and I showed the recording. They haven't been doing a good job of recording cow weights, and cow weights have been going up. So there's lots of opportunity there to bring it back.
Thanks, guys. Keith, back to you. Got a couple of questions here, but how much of the improvement in marble score year on year is due to the same producers improving genetics, and how much is about selecting better or different producers?
I haven't got that data to quote, but clearly we've seen a lot of our what we would class as our top producing producers continue to lift their averages, they've been quite consistent with that. So there are some very good producers and producer networks out there that are very focused on continuing to lift their marbling scores, and we do see that quite consistent in the data, and also that they're probably improving some of the other traits around that as well that are important to us in ADGs and things like that as well.
Yeah, and in a similar note, there's a question up there before. You've talked about how you bring animals in using genetics. Is that a genetic test, or are you looking at the sires that they're using for IMF breeding values, for example, and other production traits when you go and select cattle?
Yeah, well, certainly we know from all the history of historical data that we have on hand about where our best producers are, and some of them are quite regularly into our program, and some are, there's some producers that are maybe sporadic as far as feeding their cattle into our program. I suppose so we seek out those from EBVs and understanding their genetics on farm. I think as I touched on also, one of our biggest challenges is about we're aware of these high performing cattle in our system. How do we try to spread them out so that we haven't got this big push of high performing cattle all wanting to be taken into the system at once? That's where autumn calving programs and these other things are important, so that we can keep on taking these high performing cattle, but make sure that they fit the program across the whole year, which is very important, so that we can continue to lift the average, not just at the time when a lot of these high performing cattle are coming through, but that consistency in our overall numbers.
Yeah, good point. One back to Nick. Nick, did you want to just clarify, is it your concern that geneticists, so you're sitting next to Steve, bear in mind, are spruiking breeding values and ignoring phenotype, or were your comments more around, obviously using the two, both phenotype and visual classing alongside breeding values?
Yeah, it's more about using a balance and using both tools together to get the type of sheep that is balanced, both in terms of the genetics, which you can't see, and the phenotype that you can see, and that's something really important. And it's more about probably commercial people going too much one way or the other, and I don't think that you need to be one or the other. You can find studs that have the right phenotype and the right genotype, but you can't just sit in your office and do an Excel spreadsheet and say, well, these rams are the top 5 for the figures and I'm going to go and buy them. That's the real danger. So not the geneticists pushing the use of breeding values, and I think that as more come on board and eating quality and the more sort of genomics that we can get is going to be really exciting. The wool follicle density stuff that Andrew Michael's doing, that's all exciting stuff and will give us more information, but you still need to go and look at the physical attributes.
Yeah, good clarification. Penny's got some good questions here, so keep sending them in. So I might actually do this one. We'll get everyone on the panel to comment. This one was for you, Nick, to start, but what's one of the biggest challenges in your business or in Ranges Valley or what Steve deals with at Agbu that you think genetic technology could fix in one day? Or fix one day in the future? That's a very different question, isn't it?
I think the biggest challenge for us in our sheep business, and we've got lots of facets, so I won't even go into cattle on this one, but there's no doubt that labour, I'll broadly term it as labour, is the number one difficulty for us. Now that's on-farm labour, finding staff, and also shearing teams, contractors, the whole lot. So genomics and genetics, I hope, will allow for an easy care sheep in the future, and it'll be a sheep that can produce good wool and a high number of lambs, and people will want to work with. And that's probably the number one challenge that we're facing, to get that non-mules, high-performing sheep. And, it's not just going to be a matter of management, but the genetics and the improvement need to come through that as well.
Good comments. Now, Steve, I'll probably frame it a little bit different for you. What's one of the biggest challenges you see working in development of the analytical software to create the breeding values that Nick's using that you'd like to fix one day or work on solving?
Yeah, this is not a technical thing that I'm thinking of actually, but now that I've actually got everyone in the audience, I'd like to make the point. It's people, right? It's actually having a stable of great minds and great scientists to develop the next thing. And I look out in the room and I see Kath there and I see Matt there, and I don't know if Daniel Brown and Andrew Swan are still here, but they're all Australians born here with passports, and somewhere along the chain they got into grad school, did an honours, they got into grad school, and now they're making the tools that everyone uses. That feeder chain of talent seems to be drying up in Australia. So we have postgraduate scholarships for students to come and do PhDs and things. It's hard to find Australians coming through the system that actually are going to take that on. But we know they're out there, right? And so I guess take my advantage now. I have a bit of a plug. Don't be afraid to mention to people, geez, you're pretty smart. You like genetics. Don't you think you might want to do a master's or a PhD? You should call them up at Egwood. Just definitely call us up, because that's the future. Really, we can't have. Eventually, all these guys and girls are going to retire, and we need the next wave of smart people to build our next set of tools.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd get a common answer when I asked that question between you and Nick, but it seems labour. It's a common theme. Yeah. Keith, what about in your business?
I think it has an impact on labour too in the site, but certainly animal health and managing animal health issues. When you have 40,000 head of cattle, in a feedlot environment, even low percentage numbers are still big numbers when it comes to animal health. And I think if there's genetic improvement that can help us mitigate and reduce some of that cost and those statistics, I think that's going to be very important for the future.
So in a similar vein, I guess the work that anyone that was in the session that had Brad Hine present yesterday, that you see that having a role in your business going forward? Yeah,
absolutely. I think some of that resilience traits and those things are very pertinent. As I said, when we start to analyse data in our business and we start to see how animal health or temperament and some of these things can have an impact on performance, clearly, if we can harness that and correct that, we can make significant improvement.
Yeah, very good. I might ask a second one here, and again go back to Nick and then Steve and back to Keith. There seems to be a big disconnect between the makers, as Steve said, and the shakers in the Australian sheep industry. What do you think we can do in Australia to help close that gap?
Maybe start with Keith and Steve. Look, I think it's I suppose I don't really have an answer to that one, to be perfectly honest. I don't quite know how you do close that gap, except for the commercial guys to get on farm and actually start demanding what is impacting their economic return. Now, as primary producers, we're price takers. So we can't change what we're offered by the market. To Keith's point, they just set a grid and it's up to us to meet that grid. That's not for us to sort of do. So the way I look at how, as price takers, we put ourselves in the best position is that you open yourself to the opportunity that if Rangers has the best grid for the day, your cattle are good enough to hit that grid. So you're always at the top tier of whatever you produce, and that opens up more of those markets. So that's how we sort of place our business, and I hope it's the way the commercial guys go to open themselves up to as much opportunity, and then the smart people in the room can then help us with the breeding values and the genomics and tie all that together to help us make those decisions more easily and have more opportunity to sort of go out into the market and buy those genetics.
Very good, Steve.
I guess I'll come back to my pull, don't push, theme, I suppose. Because I think, and I've saw it, I see it in all the countries I've worked on the beef cattle side, and I think it's no different in sheep. You have, some breeders that have been, generation on generation. They've got a long-term program, been very successful, but they might not actually be advocates for DNA technology or EPDs, EBVs, genomics, or anything. But they still have very successful sales, right? So they have, people come back year after year. They've got, and like you said, just because they don't have numbers doesn't mean they're bad, right? They could very well have genetically excellent animals, but we don't know in terms of there's no data there. And so pushing, we could sit down at their kitchen table, but we could leave again. I'm sure they're not going to then suddenly become, believers and things. But I was at a field day last week for this Repronomics project, which we heard about yesterday, and there was for one of the pastoral companies, one of the buyers that buys a lot of bulls, and his point was, if you don't have a days to calving EBV, this is for tropical northern cattle, he's not going to come buy your bulls. So suddenly, then the suppliers are like, well, holy smokes, they want him coming to buy bulls, and the only way to get him there is actually to have the figures, because he was basically saying, like, I can't afford to buy cattle that don't have, and that I think is the pull. It's actually, like you said, the commercial guy has got to be saying, well, it's been good, but I can't take the risk. I've got to have the information. That's that empty box, and that's, I think, what drives it.
Yeah, great insight, Steve. Thank you. Keith?
Obviously, I won't talk about sheep meat specifically here, but I think, we put a lot of work and a lot of effort into our brand and our brand positions, and I think, the thing about being attached to a brand or collaborating within a supply chain attached to the brand should give you more security in the long run. And I think, even on what Steve covered with the cab, producers in the US that have linked onto that brand and said, okay, well, that's what I want to be connected to, because I think that takes out some of those vagrancies. There's more of a longevity of being connected to that type of supply chain and brand. And I think, that's what I suppose, I propose that we have with our producers, that, part of our core supply, into our key brands, is that our brands are going to be more resilient in the marketplace when things get tighter, and it's that brand and that recognition of that brand that we hope pulls through and supports the supply chain through those tougher times.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Keith, sorry. And in the same vein, there's another question relating to that. You touched on carbon status. Does a carbon status of a supplier influence your buying decision? If it doesn't, do you think it will in the future?
Yes. Look. Certainly, we're getting inquiries, some questions, through the network of our customers and end users out there on carbon, and I think it will become apparent that we will have to have a plan about what we're doing within that space. And as I said, that's why we've completed last year full baseline measurements by cattle type within our operation, so we know what we're generating, and the challenge now is how we put a plan to that. So I think when it comes to carbon, there's there's the questions of offsets versus that of a underlying sustainability position. And I think, what we think is more relevant for Ranges Valley and its brand is about a sustainability position. What are we doing to actually make a real difference as opposed to offsets specifically? Yes, I think it will become more and more apparent as part of our brands. And certainly if you should, put a trajectory out there, 5-10 years time, it's going to be there. It's going to be there.
Yeah. So this one was for Keith, but I might get Steve to comment as well around DNA technology to verify breed origins of branded products, e.g. to prove Wagyu or Angus. Keith, I'll get you to comment on that from a Ranges Valley perspective. But Steve, I guess, to build upon that, what role do you see DNA technology having in the supply chain more broadly, in potentially traceability, etc., as well as obviously genetic improvement?
Yeah, we actually just submitted a final report for a study we did on DNA traceability in sheep and lamb. So it's a little bit top of mind at the moment. But we looked at the different aspects of DNA traceability and what it could all be used for. It could be used for all the things you said about in terms of origin, in terms of breed, and it could also maybe underpin some programs. Let's say Ranges Valley's going to, in terms of animal welfare. So the animals, they're all polled. These genetically polled and these types of things. So there's that. What we found actually was DNA traceability just to improve traceability, because obviously you have a traceability system now, right? You got NLS tags and all the years. Some fall out, so we lose a few along the way. It breaks down, but paying for a DNA sample on every animal just to improve traceability, basically our math anyway showed that didn't pay. That wouldn't pay. But there's all these. If you imagine if every animal was genotyped, what extra value we could get out of that, and that actually could pay for itself in the future. So, for example, if every cattle beast going through Ranges Valley was genotyped, what a data source that is in terms of, so then our genetic predictions get that much more accurate, and our seed stock breeders are going that much faster, and the whole industry just becomes that much more profitable. That was really the value, and I guess one of the criticisms is say, well, it sounds like it was written by a bunch of geneticists, which it was. But so I think DNA we can do. There's lots of those kind of additional things, like you said, in terms of breed percentage and those things. But the value for genetic improvement is really what was going to pay for it at the end of the day.
Great, Keith. Did you want to comment on how you're using that at the moment?
I think for traceability, we've recently had questions to ourselves about DNA traceability programs and so forth. And I think the thing that came through is that it's all good, but is it our next level of investment as far as what we want to put into the business, or is working in the carbon space going to be more important than the traceability? And I think because we've got a supply chain and a brand that's well recognised and been very consistent in its network around the world, we just don't see that we need to do much work than to what we've got in our current system. So it's probably it's nice on there, but it's not on our priority list as such. Certainly DNA work for improving our genetics within our procurement strategies is obviously very important to the ongoing development of our cattle programs.
Great, thank you. We might have time for two more quick ones from Slido. So Keith, again, as genetic marbling improves, would you shoot for continuing to increase marble scores, or would you look at reducing time on feed? That's a very, very good question. I think certainly at the moment we still see opportunity to continue to improve marbling scores.
if I talk on Angus specifically, we're seeing the 6s and the 7s and even the odd 9 marbling scores come out, and we can take them within our program and push them out to a supply chain that benefits or certainly can pay a premium and reflect that into their marketing strategy. So I think there's still scope within our marbling results to improve, and even in our Wagyu space, I think because the general quality of beef, and marbling has become more recognisable in out in the retail space and food service space, even on mixed breeds of cattle, grass-fed cattle, small school 1, 2. I think the whole bar on marbling has continued to lift, and I think so. There is pressure, and I think there's still opportunity for that to grow within Ranges Valley. But yeah, maybe in the future, unless measurements change to express more information out of the marbling, because at the moment we're working with Osmeat marbling scores. Whether that changes in the future, but if not, yeah, there could be a point in time where we say, well, can we dial out these results with less time on feed, and then that improves other things like carbon footprints as well.
Thanks, Keith. So final question from Slido for Steve. Would genetic gain and technology adoption be helped by continual demonstration that breeding values worked? You said you did it back in the 90s, proved that it worked. Do you think enough's being done, or should we look at how we continue to do this?
Yeah, I don't think. So I guess I'll go back to that statement I made. Yeah, we did that back in the 90s. It was true we did it back in the 90s, but I guess what I realized with that study in New Zealand is we got to keep doing it. We hadn't done it for a long time, but breeders, and I guess if you go back to maybe if we've got merino stud breeders that are skeptics, right? But actually demonstrating the power of the technology, then they're like, oh, okay, well, actually, I can use that, and it's real data instead of we can do a lot of studies sometimes in terms of as geneticists, we kind of break up the data we have, but again, I think for producers it's just a lot of numbers. But if you actually, in the case of the New Zealand example, anyways, those were real cattle. We bred all the cows on this day, we ran all the steers together, and here's all the kill data. Okay, well they can relate to that. It's a bit more specific. So I don't think it's expensive to do, right? So it is an investment, but we're investing a lot in this system now. And I'll just go back to Northern Australia, the experience on Friday. I was talking, a certain breed society, and they said, well, really, in terms of EBVs, like 30% of our breeders in the breed are using EBVs. The other 70% are kind of in the doubting camp. Well, so we're investing in the system, which is only benefiting that 30%. So if we could do some more demonstration work, and this Repronomics project is good demonstration, but we need to get that other 70%. I think there's a huge opportunity for the country to basically get a good whack of this next phase of breeders onto the system. And it's different by breed. Obviously, I think Angus would be in a different situation than that, but maybe in merinos, northern beef, we can do a lot of demonstration, I think, to get people comfortable with the technology.
Nick, did you want to comment?
I'll just add a little bit to that the accuracy needs to be so good that what you see in the figures is what you're seeing in the livestock. So I think that if you don't have full parentage, you're not capturing all that data, and you're only taking it on the sire line, not the dam line, and so you're using it, say, average for the dam line. What you'll see in the classing box is not accurate enough for you to get comfortable that the figures match the physical. So it's really important to get all that tied together so you have no questions that, I was trying to think of a name to put on, but they actually data how they look. So like they look like they've got good eye muscle and fat, and they actually feel like they've got good eye muscle and fat, and the whole thing ties together. If the accuracy is not there, I think it's very hard to convince people to rely on that data so much, yeah.
Good comments, good take-homes for stud breeders, I guess, to make sure that they're collecting all the traits that are important in the objective and doing a good job of submitting it. So thanks everyone for the fantastic questions through Slido. As chair, I'm going to just conclude with a question for you all. Pre-COVID times, we were looking at running this forum 2 years after the first one. So if we were to sit here in 2 years' time, and we know that genetic progress takes time, but what would you want to see on the agenda, or what are the issues that you'd want to see people continuing to discuss at a forum like this in 2 years' time? Whoever comes up with a thought first can go, and the others can think.
I think following on from what we had this year, health, for example. So Brad Hine there's out doing a bunch of measurements at the moment in these different southern multi-breed and different places with his health traits, and talked about validation work. So I think, and just because Keith mentioned health is so important in his business, right? So I think improving health and having that on the program and seeing the results of some of those, the research that's been done. And Southern Multi-Breed is up and running, but a couple of years from now we'll have kill data, feed efficiency data, and all these things, and actually seeing that come through I think would be exciting.
Great. Keith?
Yeah, I think certainly the carbon is growing exponentially as far as the need to have solutions and so forth. So I'm sure that in 2 years' time there'll be a lot more discussions about carbon programs to support beef and sheep meat supply chains. So I think certainly we'll see that in 2 more years. And I think some of the stuff that Brad covered off yesterday, I can see clearly that there's opportunity for that to be really built upon, and there should be results of various trials and activities that could be well and truly talked about at the next forum.
I think from a commercial point of view, I think I'd like to see probably more talk about, less talk about breeds, more talk about economic return and integrated economic return. So things like rangers being able to say, we know we're going to buy your F1 Wagyus and we know they're going to marble it at a score of 8+ because your genetics are like that, so we can afford to offer you a premium, and we're rewarded, both on the wool, sheep meat, beef side of it, that our investment in genetics is not linked to breed as much as economic return for everyone involved, and that's vertically integrated. So the processors are being paid more so they can pass that back to the producer, who can then go and afford to pay a bit more for the rams and bulls that they buy.
Fantastic. I think you three haven't realised, but you've just nominated yourselves for the committee to put the agenda for the next conference together. So please give a round of applause to Nick, Steve and Keith.